So coming up next, we have a presentation on the Ballardong Aboriginal Corporation, and presenting this is Dr. Nicole Curtin, the Executive Manager of Heritage and Land Management for Ballardong Aboriginal Corp, and joining her will be Joleen Brown, Heritage Coordinator for Ballardong Aboriginal Corp, and Dawn Garlett and Caitlin Buchanan, the Ballardong Marlack Bushrangers. Please give them a warm welcome to the stage.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for having us, and thank you. Look, to be honest, it's a little bit to stand here and to be representing the Aboriginal Corporation of this country. It's a privilege. It's an honour. And I think that what I just want to say to Jeffrey is thank you for that information. It's a really important history, but I do think that it's part of the history, and I also think that the sort of sentiment that non-Indigenous people should not talk about the real history of this country, I think that's misguided. So I'd love to invite Jeffrey to come to the Ballardong Aboriginal Corporation. I stand here in my role as the Executive Manager of Heritage and Land Management. I have the absolute privilege and pleasure of working with these wonderful people. We've got a team of rangers that Dawn's going to talk about. We've got a heritage team. And I myself, I'm a non-Indigenous woman. And I don't think that I should shy away from my right and my responsibility to talk about the true history of a place. So I just think when we're using language, when we're saying things like settlers that have had Aboriginal servants, when we're talking about some of the things that have impacted upon the history in this place, I just think we have a real responsibility to actually not shy away from the true story of that. So that was just a little bit of what I wanted to speak to. But more importantly, what we're here to talk about today is our role as the representative body for this region. The Ballardong Aboriginal Corporation is one of 6 Noongar corporations that came out of the Southwest settlement. We've got the Ballardong region, which is from Northam all the way up to Wongan, past Merredin and all the way down to Wagen. It's a really, really big area, 63,000 square metres. We've got our neighbours to the south, which is the Wogglekep Noongar Corporation. If you head over to the southwest, you've got Carrick. Coming up the coast around the Bunbury region, which is where I grew up, is the Ngalakala Budja Aboriginal Corporation. We've got Whadjuk in the Perth region and Eward to the north. So we're one of the 6 Noongar corporations that came out of the Southwest settlement. And the Southwest settlement, look, I'm not an expert on it, and I'm still learning. After a year and a half with the Ballardong Aboriginal Corporation, I'm still really wrapping my head around what this settlement is and what it means. It's got a very, very long history with, elders that fought for this for a really long time. And our role as a corporation is to make sense of how we can best leverage all of those rights and responsibilities that have been vested in us. So part of the Southwest settlement is the compensation, really. It's not native title, so native title has been extinguished, and what took its place was this settlement. It's spoken about as the first treaty. Now, what that looks like and how it's implemented going forward, we really need to sort of watch this space. But part of what's going to come over to these Noongar corporations is land. And part of that land is obviously why we've got the ranger team here to look after the land, and why we've got a heritage team here, which is all of the heritage obligations that fall out of that settlement. Now, again, I'm non-Indigenous, and yes, it's not my place to talk about, spirituality or culture, and I wouldn't attest to do that. But it is my job to talk about, what's vested in these corporations, which is a responsibility. When we talk about heritage, when we talk about Noongar heritage, when we talk about Ballardong heritage, it's not just the place, it's Budja, it's country, it's the stories, it's the mort, it's the people. So this corporation, we have a responsibility for all of those things, for Budja, for mort, for Cardigan, which is the knowledge as well. So, two of the things we're going to talk to you about today. We've got our wonderful heritage coordinator here. This is Joleen Brown. She's been with us for a year and a half as well. Joleen has a background in archaeology, and she's currently doing her honours year at UWA, which is very exciting for us because it means that as a corporation, we had an opportunity to go, fantastic. We've got someone doing an honours project with all of the, the relationships within the university that we can leverage to do something really meaningful for the corporation. Now, where do we start? Joleen was originally looking at scar trees, and then that was, a really important project. But actually, as we started thinking about it more, we sort of realised that when you think about the Ballardong region, 63,000 square metres, in terms of Aboriginal heritage, Joleen will talk more about this, there's a couple of hundred registered sites, but we know that there's many, many, many more than that, of course. The whole Ballardong region, that's one of the big lofty goals. We should have the whole thing registered as an Aboriginal site. This is Aboriginal land, this is Ballardong land, always was, always will be. This corporation represents about 7 language groups. So when Joleen will talk more about the Tyndale map and the 14 Noongar nations, 14 Noongar nations that were recognised in the recognition bill that underpins the Southwest Settlement, 6 regional corporations to represent the interests of all of those diverse language groups. So the task that we have is to think, well, where do we start? With all of those families, with all of those language groups, where do we start to think about where we put our time, our efforts and our resources? So Joleen's going to talk about her honours project, which is really exciting. And then, of course, the other side of knowing and understanding where all the sites are is how do we best care for these sites? So Dawn's going to talk a little bit about our ranger program. So I'm going to hand over to Joleen.
I need to hold my rights.
I know, it's very difficult.
All right, well, something. Cool, awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the Ballardong Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the budja on which we meet today. I recognise that Ballardong is only one of 14 groups that make up the Noongar nation that spreads across the southwest. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I pay my respects to all Noongar elders, past and present, and any First Nations people with us here today. I also want to acknowledge that as a non-Indigenous researcher, the cultural authority in this project does not sit with me. It rests with Noongar elders and knowledge holders. The Southwest Native Tidal Settlement is the largest of its kind in Australian history, covering approximately 200,000 square kilometres and affects an estimated 30,000 Noongar people. In 2021, the settlement was divided into 6 Indigenous land use agreements with an Aboriginal corporation designated to manage each region. Under the settlement, BAC has prescribed responsibilities for Aboriginal heritage across the entire Ballardong-Illawarra region. That means executing heritage agreements, overseeing heritage surveys, and being the primary point of contact for any developer, miner or government agency wanting to do anything on Ballardong budja that might affect Aboriginal heritage. This is a significant legal and cultural responsibility that landed on a small team. The Ballardong-Illawarra region is approximately 63,000 kilometres squared, roughly the size of Tasmania. Across that landscape, there are 282 ACCUS sites with potentially thousands more unrecorded. Birthing sites, scar trees, rock art, artefact scatters, places connected to dreaming stories and family histories going back tens of thousands of years. All of these sites need attention to some degree. However, to date, there has been little progress in being able to undertake this in-house heritage work due to the sheer amount of time being spent on proponent work. The ranger team manages to get out there to sites as often as possible and are doing a fantastic job, but what they can feasibly cover due to corporation constraints is small in comparison to the bigger picture. Plus, they are based in Northam, just a small dot on the map that leaves a whole heap of other country that's currently not being managed. The Aboriginal Heritage Act 1972 and Noongar Standard Heritage Agreement were designed in a way that puts proponents in the driver's seat and takes up majority of the heritage team's resources. Heritage work mostly gets triggered when the developer lodges an activity notice, not when the community identifies a need, not when an elder raises a concern about heritage, but when a developer wants to do something to the land. This is because BAC has a legal obligation to follow these notices within certain timeframes. So, say we get more staff and find the time and money to manage what is on the map. Where do we start? There is no structured tool that lets us say, here is what matters, here is where we focus, here is how we make that decision in a way that is fair and culturally grounded. That gap between the legal responsibility BAC now holds and the tools it has to carry it is what this project is trying to fill. So here is my research question. How can a Noongar-led heritage prioritisation framework balance cultural significance, operational resourcing and equitable representation across the Ballardong-Ilua region, also known as Let's Build a Matrix? To answer this, I have 4 aims. 1. What do Noongar community members actually consider to be culturally significant? What makes a place more matter to them more, and what makes a site a higher priority to care for than another? 2. What are the real operational risks and the honest constraints BAC faces with the resources it has? 3. How do we make sure the framework is fair? The Ballardong-Ilua region covers 7 Noongar language groups and multiple different families. Every one of them deserves a voice, and the corporation is here to represent all equally. 4. Determine the weighting of each variable. Whether a full matrix is completed within this project or not, the foundations will be documented and ready for BAC to build on. This research is grounded in 2 core Noongar concepts, Cardigan and Budja. Cardigan is knowledge, law and ways of knowing. The knowledge that Noongar people have their own systems of understanding the world is foundational to this research and not an afterthought. Budja means country, not in a casual sense, a living relational system, land, water, sky, stories, relationships and responsibilities all woven into one. These elements shape everything about how this research is conducted. Alongside those, I'm drawing on Indigenous standpoint theory and Indigenous data sovereignty. Noongar people own their own knowledge and data, full stop, which is why my main method of data collection is yarning. Yarning is a culturally safe, semi-structured conversation, not a formal interview with a clipboard and timer sitting down with someone, having a cup of tea and having a real conversation about what matters to them. I will yarn with 10 to 12 Noongar elders and knowledge holders. Once transcribed, I will enter this information into NVivo to identify patterns across the conversations. Those patterns become the foundation for the variables within the framework. These variables should end up falling into 3 categories. Cultural, what makes a place spiritually and culturally significant. Operational, what is the risk level and what can BAC realistically manage. And equity, are all language groups and families represented fairly? Those variables will then be weighted for future use in creating a prioritisation matrix, a structured tool that lets BAC look at any heritage situation and make a decision that is culturally grounded, fair and defensible. Once the thesis is examined, the intellectual property will be handed over to BAC. The framework belongs to them permanently. On the ethics side of things, this project has received Step 1 approval from UWA's Indigenous Research Advisory Group, and the full application is currently with UWA's ethics team. This research follows the IATSA's Code of Ethics and other reputable ethics guidelines. All knowledge shared by participants remains their intellectual and cultural property. If ethics approval is not received, the framework development will proceed using BAC's heritage records rather than yarning. A good chunk of research starts at the big picture and works the way down to a specific question. This one went the other way. The gap was identified from the day-to-day reality of doing heritage work, and the research grew outward from there. So at its most fundamental level, this project is about giving BAC a tool to answer one question: where do we start? When there is capacity to do in-house heritage management, how do we decide which sites get attention first? How do we justify that decision to community, to funders, to government? Right now, there is no structured way to do that. On this slide, you can see DPLH's Aboriginal Heritage Risk Matrix. This is one of the tools that currently exist for heritage risk management assessment. It is given to proponents by DPLH as part of their due diligence guidelines. It is entirely based on what the proponent is doing to the ground. There is nothing there about cultural significance, nothing about what a place means to Noongar people, nothing about what the eyes can't see, nothing about how community sees risks to heritage. That is the gap, and it is not unique to Ballardong. Researchers like Touchner and colleagues have documented that heritage significant assessments have been produced for non-Indigenous systems, and that taking control of that production is a critical step for community-led management. Internationally, this kind of cultural change in Indigenous heritage processes has precedent. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, Tippett and Nelson developed a cultural opportunity mapping tool with Maori communities to identify culturally significant locations and guide resource management, a values-based landscape tool, not a developer-triggered one. In Canada, the Comox First Nation developed their own cultural heritage policy and Indigenous permitting system because provincial legislation simply was not good enough. Ballardong is doing the same. And for consulting archaeologists working across Noongar Budja, this project offers a model, a replicable framework that demonstrates what it looks like when an Aboriginal corporation sets the agenda. In my opinion, that is the kind of shift this profession should be supporting and aiming for, and in this region specifically, Noongar-led heritage prioritisation.
Hi, I'm the female senior ranger of the Malak Bush Rangers. So our importance to this ranger team is we combine our traditional knowledge with modern conservation to manage land, sea and cultural heritage. They protect significant sites, use traditional fire management, monitor ecosystems and restore habitats. Working with DBCA to help conserve species and promote sustainable resource use while connecting Aboriginal culture with the wider community. Indigenous land and ecosystem management involves practices that focus on preserving and nurturing the land and its ecosystems. These practices are grounded in Indigenous knowledge, cultural values and traditional ecological insights. When paired with Western scientific approaches, they create a unified and sustainable framework for land management that respects both cultural heritage and contemporary scientific principles. My first coming to this ranger team, I had nothing to do with land and everything. My father was a well-known cultural person. He passed away years ago, but I never ever got the knowledge from him to learn what he learned. He gave all his knowledge to other people, so now that I'm on this team, that I want to find out all about my cultural background, not only of the background, but of the land itself, and to help manage and get it back to what it used to be, and to move on and revegetate all the areas. Also, these are all our ranger team. We had a few come and go, but we're keeping it pretty strong at the moment, so thank you guys.
Okay, cool. So this is sort of now just a couple of slides and then a video for you that our amazing young ranger, Caitlin, who was going to be here with us today, but she's been a bit unwell. There's been a few bugs going around the office recently. I think it's just that time of year. I just want to share a couple of posters that Joleen's supervisor, Sven from UWA, he's a professor of archaeology, a couple of ways that the ranger teams work and the heritage team interface. So this was a really fantastic day that the ranger team spent at local primary school here, Northern Primary School, and something that our team's actually really proud of. If you go up to Wandoo National Park, you'll see a few new scar trees and it's really, really amazing to see this ranger group, really taking this in their own hands. We have a fantastic team. We've got such a great team. Who was here that day, Dawn? I think it was Roland and Jalissa. Did you want to say anything about that day? Because you were there as well.
Yeah, we just went to the school, done a few little activities with them on the in their classroom. Then we went out and took them out into the play area, and there was one tree that we come across that we told the kids that we was going to do a scar tree. So, and they was all excited because their first scar tree in their school. I think we're the only one who's done it with the Northern Primary. So we've a lot of other schools invited us, and we're going to try and introduce that to them too. So yeah, just taught them how to do the scar tree. The boys cut it out. I'm not quite sure. I don't think women are allowed to cut a piece from the scar tree, but yeah, the men done it. And after they done it, we told them that when you do the scar tree, it dries up, so you need to get the sand and rub it into the tree, and that stops it from drying up, and it'll keep its age, really. And when it gets older, it'll look, yeah. But yeah, they enjoyed it. They loved it. So yeah, it's just a great pleasure to go out and do that with the kids today. So learning culture to them, and they just ask so many questions, and yeah, which is good. So yeah. Yeah, this was the other week, but I was absent that day. So yeah.
So you'll see some pictures. Joleen, do you want to talk a bit about what Sven does? No, not really. Okay. You'll see down the bottom here, I actually had my son along this day. It was a really, really beautiful day. He had a go. He hurt his finger, of course, but, it was all fun. So there's a whole heap of materials here, and it was helping to just demonstrate the amazing way that these shards come off. And, of course, he then had a whole heap of fun winding that onto a stick, and thought that it was just absolutely hilarious that the grass tree sap and the kangaroo poo then gets mixed together. And so anyway, all of these things, as Dawn said, the rangers have such an important role. They really are the face of the corporation. It's their corporation. It's their mort, it's their family, it's their cardigan, it's their knowledge, it's their budja. And seeing that interface in the community and in the school, look, there's just nowhere else, I'd rather be at this stage in my career. It's an absolute joy. And what we've got now, just to finish up, is a video that Caitlin made. There's a song by Gina Williams and her partner, and just a little bit of a trip through what the Rangers have been up to.
Bindi value at winyan val canyon mortgage court. Bindi val jervin value at kurdak not you at val. Bindi
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We do have a question come through, but I have a question of my own before we ask that question. I have children. I have one young son and an adult child, and I don't hear him coming home telling me about lessons that he's learned in the school curriculum about our whole history. What would it take for the education system nationwide to include that in the curriculum from early learning? That's what I'd love to to know. And you may not have the answer to that question, but and there's a lot of people with a lot of connections, perhaps in this room. What would it take for that to be on the curriculum, and not just for the for kids like mine, but for all kids, for a lot of the kids. The First Nations kids aren't aware of their own cultural, connection. They've lost that cultural connection, haven't they? Some of them, and it's and the effect of that is so sad. So what would it take for the whole story to be educated and the language? We talk about the yarning and how important that is, and can we get that yarning in the school system? Now, I'll ask the question that we had from the floor.
Well, I can talk to that.
Great.
Because I think what we're seeing in a lot of, education's not my background. Actually, I completed my PhD working in tourism, Aboriginal tourism, with that exact question. So me and my family, I grew up in Bunbury, and, there was a little bit maybe on NAIDOC week, we might have someone come and do some kangaroo stew, or, there was some activities. But having children, how do we expose them to the true history of this place? How do we walk that line, as well as non-Indigenous people, of not wanting to go too far, not wanting to misappropriate or misrepresent, but actually acknowledging? How do we embed truth-telling across all of our systems? It's a big question because it strikes at the heart of who we are as a nation, where we're at in our journey as a nation. What does sovereignty mean? What does treaty mean? And, as I said, the Southwest Settlement is oftentimes spoken about as a treaty. There are other efforts happening, broadly across the country, and it needs to look more place-based than what it does look in other places. So it's that question, because education is at the heart of the whole story. How do we do that?
Absolutely.
Well, I think we're seeing a bit of a generational shift, but we've still got a long way to go. So I think it takes courage. I think it takes representation. When you go and do your tour of Northam, if you do that, you'll see the train station and you'll see our branding. Representation is really, really important. The work that these rangers are doing in the community and in schools is really, really important. But Aboriginal corporations can only play their part. And the reason why I was really interested in Aboriginal tourism is because it's a really accessible interface for non-Indigenous people who maybe don't have connection or don't have family, or they didn't experience it at school or anywhere in their life. Such a large majority of non-Indigenous Australians actually don't ever come into contact with Aboriginal people, Noongar people. So I was really fascinated by this interface of Indigenous tourism. The opportunities are there. Billia Court Budja is one where I think that there are some activities centred around, and there's many, many more. WATOC is the West Australian Indigenous Tourism Operators Council. If it's not happening in schools, then as families and as parents, we can seek that out ourselves. And a really exciting thing that, we can look at doing in the future. Dawn works with PCYC quite often to take kids out to Wandoo National Park. More things like that. Once these corporations get strong, once we have our foundations, these corporations really do provide great pathways into, all of these sectors, because in my mind, the shift that needs to happen, the social change that needs to happen across the board, and education is just one of those settings.
Thanks, Nicole. So the question from the floor, okay, so we've got a couple of questions before we go to the morning tea break. How does cultural burning fit in with the DFES guidelines and compliance? Big question.
No. Look, do you want to speak to this? Or when I spoke about, shifts that needs to happen, this is another shift that needs to happen. I don't want to be disparaging of DFES. We have a fantastic relationship with Dave Windsor, who works down at the Bushfire Centre of Excellence and is looking at this exact question. But look, let's not beat around the bush either. We need government to do things very, very differently. When we talk about the actual change that's needed, we're talking about transformative change that's needed, because none of this sort of tinkering around the edges is actually going to. We're just past that. We're past tinkering around the edges. We need to do things very, very differently. So, we're building strong relationships with government departments because we have to do that, but also we're not backwards in coming forwards trying to assert the rights of Noongar people. Yeah, you can speak to that. Do you want to speak to that?
Just pass you a microphone so our folks online can hear.
Yeah, I could probably answer a bit of that. My name's Ken Kelly. I'm from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. I'm the Senior Heritage Officer in the Pilbara. And look, just in regards to cultural burning and fire management, it's the same as everything else. What needs to happen is a permit needs to apply for if, in particular, the burning's going to happen around a culturally significant site. And there needs to be a burning plan put in place. In the Pilbara, a lot of our ranger groups up there are going through fire mitigation training, and they get certification for it. And I'm hoping that the rangers down here will get it. But basically, if they're going to burn around a culturally significant site, they need to apply to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage for what's known as a Regulation 7 and 10. And basically what that is to bring fire equipment that onto the ground. And in regards to the fire management, there's not only DFES, but there's DBCA and DPOR as well that we need to work with. So basically, it's not something that people will go out, light a fire. There's planning involved in it. There's approvals that are needed. And there also has to be a fire management plan put in place with DBCA, DFES, and the volunteers from the shires and out there. The management of fires is quite an interesting one because there are sections in there like if it's a local fire, there's a permit granted and it's managed really well. DFES don't get involved. But if it gets out of control, then it comes under the Fire and Emergencies Act, and that's when DFES takes over. So there is like plans and that in place, permits required, and it's not something that people just go out there and light a fire. There has to be like a suitable time and the permits granted. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Folks, please put your hands together once more for Dr. Nicole, Curtin, Joleen Brown and Dawn Garlett. Thank you so much for your wisdom on this subject.